First thing that I really like about the console is the routing options. So you've got loads and loads of different ways of routing things on the desk, much more than the sort of competing desks, which I suppose are mostly the API, the box. It's perhaps not as versatile as the Audient desk that's a similar price. Each of the channels can feed each of the 4 stereo buses. Each of these stereo buses also follows the same pan pot. So if I wanted to route something to bus D, but I only wanted it on the right side, I would pan it there. So that effectively means that you've got your main master bus, plus you could see it as being 6 mono buses or 3 stereo buses. For example, if I wanted to print kick drum on the way in, I could bring the kick drum in on 1 and 2. Why would you have your kick drum anywhere else? So you'd have it on 1 and 2, and then I could press C. I could pan them both left. They would now just be on the left side of bus C. I could just take a patch cable and I could patch the output of the left of bus C into another channel and print 1 channel for kick. You might say, why would you want to do that? Just to commit to a sound. You could also then maybe send those kicks through the API 560, which is very common EQ to use for kick, and that will be EQing both kicks at the same time as one sound. And there is something to be said for committing to a sound when you do it. I understand the arguments both ways. As I've talked about in other videos, which I can link here, these buses B, C and D can borrow from these 500 series slots. And the 500 series thing is a really great way of doing it. What I like about it is that it doesn't tie you to just one type of sound. I'm short of 2 slots at the moment. I'm actually gonna get 2 more of these. I might get some kits. If anyone has any advice about SSL kits, please do let me know in the comments below. That'd be brilliant. That leads me on to the first gripe really of the console, which is that unlike the sort of smaller, cheaper consoles like the SSL 6 that I've got here, there's no high pass filters on any of the channels. And you might think, oh yeah, well that's an EQ thing, isn't it? You know, it's part of the EQ thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So on my Cappy EQs, I've got high pass filters. On the SSL EQs that they sort of pitch as being the EQ that is for this desk, they actually sold fully loaded versions of this desk with 16 of them in, or half loaded versions with 8 of them in. There's no high pass filter, which means that you don't have a high pass filter on those first 4 channels, which for me, when I'm tracking, I really like having a high pass filter. I sometimes patch in the SSL because it does have a high pass filter here. The SSL 6 has the high pass filter. Or I use like something like these 1073s that have a high pass filter, or my Cappies that have a high pass filter. The other thing with the 500 series stuff, which is amazing to have the 500 series stuff available, it's just a second insert on the desk. And if the 500 button is in, then it just switches that insert in. Now those inserts are just on the patch bay, they're labeled 500, but they're just on the patch bay over here, and I just have them normaled to those inputs, which means that you can actually route anything to any of these slots, and it does mean that you have 2 inserts on the desk. The versatility of just seeing it there is just a little bit more familiar, that if you have an EQ that's above that channel and you just press the 500 button, that EQ comes in on that channel, is just quite quick. It means that you don't have to patch that in for that channel. That's it, basically. This is slightly annoying, is that the bus compressor doesn't appear on the patch bay. Now I kind of understand why. I suppose it would mean that there'd be 2 inserts on the master bus then, but I find it a little bit annoying because sometimes, like, this is a great compressor to use as a drum bus. So it'd be really cool to do that without having to, I mean, what you have to do is break out the screwdriver, take it out and put it somewhere else in your studio, put it in this slot or whatever, or in another rack. And if you're gonna, you know, you're not, let's face it, you're just not gonna do it, are you? You know, unless you really, really wanted to do that, you're just not gonna do it. One of the things that's on some of the newer desks, I think this is one of the earlier desks where they realised that everyone just wanted to use their computer most of the time. And, you know, they didn't really need a big behemoth in front of them. The size of the XL desk is kind of what sold me on it. My control room's not very big, and I kind of thought, you know, if I ever gave up the space here that I rent, that, you know, I could still actually put this in a room at home in like a little console thing. It wouldn't look out of place in most home studios, music rooms, things like that. There are fans on the desk. I don't know whether you can hear them in the video. They don't really pose a problem. They haven't posed a problem to me. They're nearly always on, but they don't really get any louder than they are now. We track acoustic guitars in this room pretty regularly, and we've never had a problem. Maybe it'd be mitigated further if there were some high pass filters. The monitor section on the console is brilliant. It really shines here. We have different things that we can monitor. So we can monitor mix A, we can monitor an external input, which I actually have wired from 31 and 32 are normal to the external input, which means that you could put like a reference mix on here and then switch back to the mix that you're doing, back to your rough, back and forward really quickly, which is cool. The I jack is here. Now that actually comes in from this stupid little input here, which is kind of useful, I suppose, if you've got clients turn up with their phones and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Most clients' phones though now are iPhones with no headphone port, so there's no you know, you'd have to have an adapter and stuff ready to go. Again, shame really that this doesn't just come up on the patch bay, and then it could be a third input that's usable. I think I've had the console for about 2 years. I think this has been used twice in 2 years. You can also sum the monitor source, which means that you can listen to all three at the same time, or whichever ones are on effectively at the same time, which is pretty cool, I guess. We can also switch between different monitors. So at the moment, they'll be coming out of what like the big speakers, I suppose, is what they think of it as being. And then so at the moment, for me, that's my Adam A77. If I switch to Mini 1, it switches to the speakers that are in Mini 1, which presently are these Dynaudios. If I switch to Mini 2, it goes to the Avantone, the little mix cube that I've got on loan from my mate Gaz. Probably one of the best things, definitely going to have to get one. It's brilliant. What's cool is there's some dip switches on the back, and you can switch it so that when it switches to that, it switches into mono. So I don't just get a left. This is a stereo output, but I'm just plugged into one of those outputs because I've got my little mono speaker here. So when you switch this, it switches the mix straight into mono. You can also, there's a subwoofer output, and you can also configure that for whichever of the speaker setups you want it to switch on with. Just quite a cool little touch. A few other cool little things in the master section. We've got some solo safes, so I have my last 4 channels solo safe because I use those as returns for Pro Tools typically. Which means that if I solo something, these channels are still in their solo safe. That means that when you solo these channels, these ones don't get muted, but as you can see, everything else does. So when I solo those, the rest of those get muted. These ones don't because they're solo safed. It leads me on to another gripe, which is that unfortunately the talkback input is pretty noisy. It's got a bit of a hiss on it, which is a little bit irritating. It only really bothers me when somebody else is recording me and I have to suffer the hiss in my ear. That was a little bit irritating. I've got this cheap little PreSonus monitor station, which is great. I did a review of that actually. It's a great little monitor station. I'll put that link there. It's absolutely fantastic. Now the output from this is clean as a whistle on the talkback mic, and it was considerably cheaper than the SSL. Yeah, that was a little bit disappointing. I was expecting that to be much better. There's some other cool little features as well. There's a listen mic input that has the listen mic compressor on it, similar to what's on the SSL 6. If you have any questions about the SSL XL Desk, please do let me know in the comments below. Please do give the video a like and subscribe if you're interested in this content. That really helps. Happy to do content on anything that any of you want, so please do let me know what you're after. Cheers.